Good morning, Breakfast at 9 family. We really miss you. I wish I could be doing this looking at your lovely smiley faces instead of talking to an iPad, which feels very strange. We've even had to come inside because there's a helicopter circling overhead, so it was a bit loud. Anyway, I was wondering, what are you like at saying goodbye? I find it really hard to say goodbye to people, especially people I love, and especially when I'm not sure when I'll see them again. There's always lots of tears when we leave our America family. So I really feel for the disciples having to say goodbye to Jesus, especially because they felt they'd already said goodbye when Jesus died on a cross. No one was expecting to see him again. And yet, miraculously, God raised him from the dead. And he came and he walked with them and talked with them and even ate with them. And so saying goodbye a second time must have been really hard. But Jesus had some very important things to say to the disciples before he went back to heaven. So he gathered them together and he began to speak to them about what he wanted them to do next. It's what we come to know as the Great Commission. So I thought it was important we understand what a commission is. I found this really cool definition that I'm going to read to you. It says a commission is the act of granting certain powers or authority to carry out a particular task or duty. And that's perfect because I wanted to draw our attention to the verse just before the Great Commission, where Jesus says something truly incredible. He says, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go." All authority has been given to Jesus. Now, if you have all of something, there's none left for anybody else, is there? If you ate all the biscuits out of the biscuit tin, well, for one thing, you'd probably be in trouble, but also there would be none left for anybody else. And that's really important. If Jesus has all the authority in heaven and on earth, our enemy, the devil, has none. He has no authority over us. Oh, he can try to intimidate us, try and make life very difficult for us, but ultimately he has no authority. Jesus has it all. When Jesus died on the cross, he won a victory over sin, all the bad stuff that we do. He won a victory over shame, all the bad stuff that we feel about ourselves. And he won a victory over all the bad stuff that gets put on us by other people. None of those things can have power over those who have submitted their lives to Jesus. And that is the really good news that we are to take out into the world. And if that wasn't amazing enough, when Jesus rose from the dead, he also won a victory over the power of death. Death has no power over us either when we belong to Jesus. That incredible good news Jesus wants us to take out into the world. It's what he said to his disciples, "Therefore go and make disciples." Start where you are and then go into all the world until everybody knows about the amazing saving love of Jesus. So what did the disciples do? Did they go straight out and start telling people? No, they didn't. They went to Jerusalem and they waited. They waited because the second thing that Jesus says is, "I'm going to be with you always." And the way I'm going to be with you is I'm going to send my Holy Spirit. When I go back to the Father in heaven, the Holy Spirit is going to come and empower you. Going back to our biscuit tin analogy, if you own all the biscuits, you can decide who you share them with. And incredibly, Jesus is deciding he is going to share his power and authority with those who love him, with those who decide to give their lives to him and follow him. He is going to share that power and authority. And so the disciples waited, and they stayed together and they prayed until the day the Holy Spirit came, the day of Pentecost, which we'll hear more about later on in May. But at this crucial time, these very ordinary people, these fishermen, tax collectors, just very ordinary, uneducated people, went from being uncertain, probably a little bit afraid and a little bit inadequate, to share the gospel message. The Holy Spirit came and they were completely changed. And then they did go out and they did preach the gospel in all the world, and no amount of hardship and discouragement could prevent them talking to people about Jesus. So that got me wondering about us, because this Great Commission, it applies to us too, to anyone who calls themselves a follower of Jesus. We too are to go into all the world, telling people the good news, knowing that Jesus, through his Holy Spirit, is with us always, everywhere. But sometimes we feel a bit inadequate, don't we? It made me think of a time when I was only about 10. I was in a whole school assembly, so there were hundreds of us. And the head teacher picked me out from the back of the assembly hall for a very important job. He asked me to take an urgent message to another member of staff. Well, I felt so proud that I'd been chosen. But then, horror, I realised that my friends had got a bit bored during assembly and they'd been tying people's shoelaces together. And when I went to get up to take this important message, I couldn't, because my shoes were tied together. And I think sometimes we feel like that, don't we? We feel we want to go out and tell people about Jesus, but somehow something is preventing us. Maybe we don't feel educated enough. Maybe we don't feel we know our Bibles well enough. Maybe we just feel a little bit inadequate, if we're honest. I know I do. I'm always telling people I'm not an evangelist. I find it hard to talk to people about Jesus. But looking at this Great Commission and the change that happened in these disciples when the Holy Spirit came, alongside reading a book called Defining Moments about men and women, very ordinary men and women, who decided to pursue encounters with God. And then once the Holy Spirit had come upon them, they too could not be stopped from telling the good news of Jesus to anyone and everyone they met, and all throughout the world. And I began to think, do you know what? We're like those disciples. We're in lockdown at the moment. We can't really go anywhere, can we? So surely this is an incredible opportunity for us, like those first disciples, to wait and to pray and to seek after encounters with God and more infilling of his Holy Spirit that change us so much and so powerfully that when the lockdown is over, we're ready. We're ready to fulfill our part in the Great Commission, to go out to whoever God may send us to, whether that's family or friends or people at the school gate, others in the school playground, or to a completely different country. I feel more hungry than ever to encounter God more fully in this crisis time. And I hope that you will join me in praying that we would encounter God more fully and be filled more fully with his Holy Spirit, so that at the right time we can go with power and authority from Jesus to share the good news with whoever we meet.